Emma Lawson pressed herself against the rough wooden slats of the abandoned grain storage shed, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps that she struggled desperately to quiet. Through a crack in the weathered boards, she could see the three men dismounting their horses in the dusty street of Coloma, California, their faces hard and their eyes scanning the row of buildings with predatory intent. She recognized them immediately. Wade Harper and his two accomplices, the same men who had murdered her father 2 weeks ago when he refused to sell his silver claim, and who had been hunting her ever since she witnessed the killing from behind the stable door. The September afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the small mining town, casting sharp shadows across the rutted dirt road. Emma's dark hair clung to her damp forehead, and her plain cotton dress was torn at the hem from where it had caught on brambles during her desperate flight through the scrub brush outside of town. She had been traveling for days, sleeping in caves and abandoned prospector shacks, living on creek water and the few biscuits she had managed to stuff into her pockets, before fleeing her family's claim near Nevada City. She had thought Coloma might offer sanctuary, a place to disappear among the remaining miners and merchants who still clung to life here 15 years after the initial gold rush had faded to memory. But Wade Harper was relentless. He wanted her dead because she was the only witness to what he had done. And more than that, he wanted the deed to her father's claim that she carried hidden in the lining of her worn traveling bag. That silver deposit was worth a fortune, and Harper was the kind of man who would kill without hesitation to get what he wanted. Emma heard their boots on the wooden sidewalk now, the distinctive jingle of spurs growing closer. Her heart hammered so violently she feared they might actually hear it. She pressed herself deeper into the shadows of the shed, surrounded by the musty smell of old grain and mouse droppings. The building had been empty for years, ever since the Johnsons had given up their general store and moved back east, but it was the only shelter she had been able to reach when she spotted Harper's distinctive black horse at the edge of town. "Spread out," Harper's gravelly voice commanded. "She can't have gone far. Jenkins saw her heading down this way not 20 minutes ago." Emma's blood ran cold. Someone had spotted her. She should have been more careful, should have waited until dark to enter town, but she had been so hungry, so desperate for help. Now that desperation might cost her everything. The footsteps split up, moving in different directions. She heard one set growing closer to her hiding place, and she bit down hard on her lip to keep from whimpering. Through the crack in the boards, she could see one of Harper's men, a wiry fellow with a scar across his cheek, approaching the shed with his hand resting on the revolver at his hip. Then she heard another sound, the steady clip of a horse's hooves, approaching from the opposite end of the street at an unhurried pace. The scarred man paused, turning toward the sound. Emma shifted slightly, trying to see who was coming, and her elbow brushed against an old tin bucket that scraped against the wooden floor with a soft but audible rasp. The scarred man's head snapped around. "Over here," he called out, his voice carrying easily in the still afternoon air. "I think she's in this shed." Emma's stomach dropped. This was it. She was trapped with no way out, no weapon except the small folding knife in her pocket that would be useless against 3 armed men. She pressed her back against the wall and fumbled for the knife anyway, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. The door to the shed began to creak open, sunlight spilling across the dusty floor. Emma raised her pathetic knife, knowing it was futile but refusing to give up without some kind of fight. Her father had not raised a coward, even if he had raised a daughter who was utterly unprepared for the brutality of men like Wade Harper. But before the scarred man could push the door fully open, a voice rang out across the street, calm and steady and carrying the kind of authority that made people stop and listen. That's far enough. The door stopped moving. Emma heard the scarred man step back, and through the widening crack, she could now see a man on horseback. He sat tall in the saddle on a dappled gray mare, dressed in worn denim pants, a dark vest over a blue shirt, and a wide-brimmed hat that shaded his face. A holster hung low on his right hip, the revolver in it looking well-maintained and frequently used. But what struck Emma most was the way he sat there, completely relaxed, yet somehow radiating a quiet danger that made the scarred man take another step backward. "This ain't your business, stranger," the scarred man said, though his voice had lost some of its confidence. "I am making it my business," the stranger replied. He urged his horse forward a few steps, and now Emma could see his face more clearly. He looked to be in his late 20s, with strong features weathered by sun and wind, a firm jaw shadowed by a few days of stubble, and eyes that were a striking light gray, like storm clouds over the Sierra Nevada. Those eyes were fixed on the scarred man with an intensity that was almost physical. Wade Harper emerged from between two buildings across the street, his two companions converging on the scene. Harper was a big man, thick through the shoulders and chest, with a florid face and small, mean eyes. He wore an expensive leather vest and silver-trimmed boots that spoke of money, probably stolen from men like Emma's father. "Lucas Grant," Harper said, recognition and something like wariness entering his voice. "Didn't expect to see you in these parts." "Wade," Lucas replied, his tone flat and unwelcoming. "Heard you were down near Nevada City way. Surprised to find you this far west." "Following some business," Harper said carefully. "Personal business, nothing that concerns you. That's so." Lucas's gaze swept over the three men, taking in their positions, their weapons, the tension in their bodies. Then his eyes moved to the shed, lingering on the partially open door. What kind of personal business has three armed men hunting through abandoned buildings in the middle of the afternoon? "Like I said, nothing that concerns you." Harper's hand moved closer to his gun. "Best you ride on, Grant. No need for trouble here." Emma held her breath. She did not know who this Lucas Grant was, but Harper clearly did, and clearly had reason to be cautious around him. She watched through the crack as Lucas dismounted with easy grace, keeping his horse between himself and Harper's men. When his boots hit the ground, she could see he was tall, probably a few inches over 6 feet, with the lean, strong build of a man who spent his life outdoors and in the saddle. "I think there is need," Lucas said quietly. "See, I do not much like the odds of 3 men with guns stalking around an old shed like they are hunting something that cannot fight back. Makes me curious about what or who you are looking for." The scarred man shifted nervously. Harper's face darkened with anger. "This is none of your concern, Grant. You have made a reputation as a gun hand and a tracker, fine. But you do not have a badge. You do not have any authority here, and you sure as hell do not have the right to interfere with my business." "My authority comes from the fact that I am standing here with my hand near my gun, telling you that whatever you are doing stops now," Lucas said, his voice still calm but with an edge of steel beneath the words. "And my right comes from the fact that I have never much liked you, Wade. Not since I heard about how you drove the Morrison family off their claim 3 years back with threats and night raids. So let us be real clear about what is happening here. You are going to tell your boys to back away from that shed, you are going to mount up, and you are going to ride out of Coloma." Harper's face went even redder. "The hell I will. You have no idea what you are stepping into here, Grant. That shed has got something that belongs to me, and I will be damned if I am going to let some drifter with a gun tell me otherwise." "Nothing in that shed belongs to you," Lucas said flatly. "Now you can ride out peaceful, or we can settle this another way. Your choice, but choose quick because my patience is about worn through. The tension stretched so tight Emma thought it might snap. She could see the calculation in Harper's eyes, weighing his chances. 3 against 1 should have been good odds, but something about the way Lucas Grant stood there, utterly unafraid and completely ready for whatever came next, seemed to give Harper pause. Finally, Harper took a step back. "You are making a mistake," he said. "A big one. Whatever is in that shed, whoever is in there, they are under my claim. You take that on, you are taking on a world of trouble." "She is under my protection now," Lucas said quietly, his eyes never leaving Harper's face. "That is all you need to know. Anyone wants to get to her, they go through me first. So I will ask one more time. Are you going to ride out, or are we going to have a different kind of conversation?" Emma's heart leaped into her throat at his words. He had said she, which meant he knew someone was hiding in the shed, knew it was a woman, and was deliberately standing between her and these murderers. She did not understand why a complete stranger would take such a risk, but gratitude flooded through her so powerfully she felt tears sting her eyes. Harper stared at Lucas for a long moment, then spat into the dust. "This is not over," he said. "Not by a long shot. You just made yourself an enemy, Grant, and I do not forget." "I will sleep fine tonight regardless," Lucas replied. With visible reluctance, Harper jerked his head toward his men. "Mount up," he ordered. The 3 men backed toward their horses, keeping their eyes on Lucas the whole time. Once they were in their saddles, Harper fixed Lucas with a venomous glare. "You do not know what you are protecting," he said. "That girl is a thief and a liar, and you will regret this." "I will take my chances," Lucas said. Harper yanked his horse around and spurred it into a gallop, his 2 men following close behind. The sound of their hoofbeats faded into the distance, leaving only the dust they had kicked up hanging in the still air. Lucas stood motionless until the sound disappeared entirely, then he finally relaxed his stance and turned toward the shed. "You can come out now," he called gently. "They are gone, at least for the moment." Emma hesitated, her mind racing. Every instinct told her not to trust anyone, that trusting people was what had gotten her father killed and her life destroyed. But this man had just faced down 3 armed killers on behalf of someone he had never met, someone he could not even see. That had to count for something. Slowly, she pushed the shed door open wider and stepped out into the sunlight, blinking against the brightness after the dimness of her hiding place. She kept the knife clutched in her hand, though she lowered it to her side. Lucas Grant turned to face her fully, and she saw his eyes widen slightly at the sight of her. She knew what she must look like. Dirty, disheveled, with her dark hair falling loose from its pins and her dress torn and stained. She had not seen a mirror in 2 weeks, but she imagined her face was thin and pale, her brown eyes too large and ringed with shadows from sleepless nights. She was 22 years old, but probably looked both younger and older at the same time, worn down by fear and exhaustion but still carrying the softness of youth in her features. "It is all right," Lucas said softly, holding his hands up to show they were empty, away from his gun. "I am not going to hurt you. My name is Lucas Grant. What is yours?" "Emma," she managed, her voice coming out as barely more than a whisper. She cleared her throat and tried again. "Emma Lawson." Recognition flickered in his eyes. "Lawson. I heard about a prospector named Lawson up near Nevada City, had a silver claim. Heard he died a few weeks back." Fresh pain lanced through her chest. "He was my father," she said. "Those men, Harper and his gang, they killed him. They wanted his claim, and when he would not sell, they shot him. I saw it happen. They have been hunting me ever since." Lucas's jaw tightened. "I am sorry about your father," he said, and the sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. That must have been terrible. Emma felt the tears threatening again and blinked them back fiercely. She had cried enough over the past 2 weeks, cried until she had no more tears left. Now was not the time to break down again. "Thank you," she said, "and thank you for stopping them. I do not understand why you helped me, but I am grateful." "Did not seem right. 3 armed men hunting one woman," Lucas said simply. "Besides, I know Wade Harper's reputation. If he was after you, I figured you were probably on the right side of things." "He will come back," Emma said urgently. "He wants the deed to my father's claim. It is worth a lot of money, and he will not stop until he gets it or I am dead." "Then we need to get you somewhere safe," Lucas said. He glanced up at the sun, gauging the time. "It will be dark in a few hours." "Harper will not try anything in town with witnesses, but once night falls, all bets are off. You have anyone here in Coloma? Anyone who can take you in?" Emma shook her head. "I do not know anyone here. I was trying to get to Sacramento to find a marshal or someone who could help, but I ran out of money and food. I thought I could maybe earn enough for a stagecoach ticket, but then Harper showed up." Lucas was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he seemed to come to a decision. "There is a woman named Mrs. Patterson who runs a boarding house on the edge of town. She is tough as nails and does not take guff from anyone. I will take you there, and we will figure out our next move." "Our next move?" Emma echoed. "You have already done more than enough." "I cannot ask you to put yourself in more danger for me." Lucas met her eyes, and she saw something in his gaze that made her breath catch. There was determination there, but also a kind of decency that she had almost forgotten existed after 2 weeks of running and hiding and seeing the worst that men could do. "I told Harper you were under my protection," Lucas said. "I do not say things I do not mean. You need help, and I am going to help you. Simple as that." Emma wanted to argue, wanted to insist that she could not accept such a sacrifice from a stranger, but the truth was she was exhausted, terrified, and completely out of options. Pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. "All right," she said quietly. "Thank you, Mr. Grant." "Lucas," he corrected gently. "If we are going to be watching each other's backs, might as well be on a first-name basis." "Lucas," she repeated and managed a small, tired smile. "I am Emma." "I know," he said, returning her smile with one of his own. And for just a moment, the fear receded and she felt something almost like hope. Lucas retrieved his horse and checked the street carefully before gesturing for Emma to follow him. She noticed how he positioned himself between her and the open road, his hand staying close to his gun as they walked. He was watchful but not obviously tense, the kind of alertness that came from long practice. It made her curious about who he was, what he had done to earn Wade Harper's wariness. The boarding house was a sturdy 2-story building painted white with green shutters, set back from the main street with a small garden in front where vegetables grew in neat rows. Lucas tied his horse to the post out front and helped Emma up the steps to the porch. Before he could knock, the door swung open to reveal a stout woman in her 50s with steel gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. "Lucas Grant," she said, her voice carrying a hint of surprise. "Have not seen you in these parts for near on a year. What brings you back to Coloma?" "Afternoon, Martha," Lucas said. "I need a favor, a big one. This is Emma Lawson, and she needs a safe place to stay. She has got some trouble following her, the dangerous kind, and I am asking if you will take her in." Martha's shrewd gaze shifted to Emma, taking in her disheveled appearance and the fear that Emma knew must still be visible in her eyes. "What kind of trouble?" Martha asked bluntly. Emma straightened her shoulders, refusing to be cowed despite her exhaustion. "Wade Harper and his men killed my father for his silver claim, and they have been hunting me because I witnessed it. I have the deed to the claim, which is what they really want. Lucas helped me when they tracked me here. Martha's expression darkened. Wade Harper, that snake. Heard he was terrorizing prospectors up north. Did not know he had graduated to murder, though I cannot say I am surprised. She stepped back and opened the door wider. Come in, both of you. Anyone being hunted by Wade Harper is welcome under my roof. The interior of the boarding house was clean and comfortable, with well-worn furniture that spoke of care and practicality. Martha led them into a sitting room and gestured for Emma to take a seat on a sofa while Lucas remained standing, still alert to potential danger. When did you last eat, child? Martha asked Emma. Emma tried to remember. Yesterday morning, I think. Some berries I found along the trail. Martha made a sound of disapproval. Lucas, you watch the windows. I am going to get this girl some proper food. She bustled out of the room, leaving Emma and Lucas alone. Emma sank deeper into the sofa, feeling the exhaustion settling over her like a heavy blanket now that she was somewhere relatively safe. Is she always that formidable? She asked. Lucas's mouth quirked in a smile. Always. Martha Patterson is one of the strongest people I know. When her husband died 10 years back, she could have packed up and gone back east to live with her sister, but she decided to stay here and run this boarding house on her own. She has faced down drunken minors, card cheats, and once even a grizzly bear that wandered into her garden. If anyone can help keep you safe, it is her. How do you know her? Emma asked, curious about this man who had appeared out of nowhere to save her life. Lucas moved to the window and peered out through the lace curtain. I stayed here a few years back when I was working in the area. I do some tracking, some guiding, some protection work for people who need it. Martha and I got to be friends. She has got a good heart, even if she hides it under a lot of starch and stern looks. And Wade Harper. You know him too? Lucas's expression hardened. Know of him more than know him personally. Our paths have crossed a few times over the years. He is a bully and a thief, the kind of man who preys on people who cannot defend themselves. About 3 years ago, I was working for a family named Morrison, protecting their claim from night raids. Harper was behind the raids, trying to scare them off so he could take over their land. I stopped him that time, but he managed to slip away before the law could get involved. He has hated me since. So you were not exaggerating when you said you did not like him, Emma said. Not one bit, Lucas confirmed. Men like Harper are a poison on this land. They give everyone else a bad name. Martha returned with a tray laden with bread, cheese, cold chicken, and a tall glass of milk. Emma's stomach growled loudly at the sight, and she felt her cheeks heat with embarrassment. But Martha just smiled, the expression softening her stern features. Go ahead and eat, dear. You look like you need it. Emma did not need to be told twice. She ate slowly at first, trying to maintain some dignity, but hunger won out and soon she was devouring the food with single-minded focus. Martha and Lucas talked quietly while she ate, discussing the situation in low voices. How many men does Harper have with him? Martha asked. Saw 3 total, including him, Lucas replied. But he might have more camped outside of town. What are you planning to do? Get Emma to Sacramento safely so she can testify about what happened to her father. With her testimony and the deed to prove ownership, the law can go after Harper for murder and attempted theft. Sacramento is 4 days' ride, and that is pushing hard, Martha said. Harper will not let her get that far without trying something. I know, Lucas said grimly, but staying here is not an option either. He will wait her out and eventually he will find an opening to strike. Emma finished eating and set down the empty plate, feeling more human than she had in days. I do not want to bring trouble on either of you, she said. If Harper knows I am here, he might try to burn the place down or worse. Martha waved a dismissive hand. I have dealt with worse than Wade Harper in my time. Besides, Lucas is right. You need to get to the law, and that means Sacramento. The question is how to get you there in one piece. We leave before dawn, Lucas said decisively. Harper will be watching the roads, but I know some trails through the hills that will be harder for him to follow. It will take longer, maybe 5 or 6 days instead of 4, but it will be safer. You are seriously planning to take me all the way to Sacramento? Emma asked, still struggling to believe this stranger would go so far for her. Lucas turned from the window to look at her directly. I told you, you are under my protection now. That means seeing this through until you are safe. I am not going to abandon you halfway. The certainty in his voice, the steady resolve in those gray eyes, made something warm bloom in Emma's chest. She had spent 2 weeks believing she was completely alone in the world, that her father's death had left her with no one to rely on. But here was this man, this Lucas Grant, offering not just temporary help but real protection, the kind that came with commitment and risk. I do not know how I will ever repay you, she said softly. Do not worry about that now, Lucas replied. Right now you need rest. Martha, can you set her up in a room upstairs? Somewhere with a window that faces the back, not the street. Already thought of that, Martha said. Come on, Emma, let us get you cleaned up and into a proper bed. Emma followed Martha upstairs, her legs feeling shaky now that the adrenaline had fully worn off. Martha showed her to a small but clean room with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the garden and the hills beyond. A pitcher of water and clean towels waited on the washstand, and Martha produced a simple but clean cotton nightgown from a chest of drawers. This was my daughter's, Martha said quietly. She moved to San Francisco 5 years ago with her husband. I kept some of her things. You are about the same size, I think. Thank you, Emma said, touching the soft fabric gently. For everything. Martha's expression softened even further. You have been through a terrible ordeal losing your father like that, but you are not alone anymore, you understand. Lucas is a good man, one of the best I have known, and if he has said he will protect you, then you can trust that he will. And I will do everything I can to help as well. Emma felt tears threatening again and blinked them back. I understand, she managed. Thank you. Martha left her alone to wash and change. Emma stripped off her filthy, torn dress with relief and used the water and towels to clean away 2 weeks of dirt and sweat. The simple act of washing her face and hands felt like a luxury she had forgotten existed. She pulled on the nightgown and sank onto the bed, and the softness of the mattress and clean sheets was so overwhelming after sleeping on hard ground that she could not stop a few tears from escaping. But they were not tears of fear this time. They were tears of relief, of gratitude, of the sudden overwhelming emotion that came from being shown kindness when she had expected only cruelty and indifference. She lay back on the pillow and closed her eyes, intending to rest for just a moment, but exhaustion dragged her down into sleep almost immediately. When she woke, the room was dark, and it took her a moment to remember where she was. Moonlight streamed through the window, and she could hear the distant sound of someone moving around downstairs. She sat up slowly, disoriented, and realized she must have slept for hours. Her body ached from weeks of hard travel, but the sleep had helped, and for the first time since her father's death, she felt like she could actually think clearly. She got out of bed and moved to the window, looking out over the moonlit garden. Everything was quiet and peaceful, but she knew that peace was deceptive. Wade Harper was out there somewhere, waiting and planning, and she could not let herself forget that. A soft knock on the door made her turn. "Come in," she called quietly. The door opened to reveal Lucas, still fully dressed and alert. "Sorry to wake you," he said. "I saw the light under your door and wanted to check that you were all right." I am, Emma said. Thank you. What time is it? Little past midnight. We should leave in a few hours before first light. I wanted to give you as much rest as possible, but we cannot wait too long. Emma nodded. I will be ready. Lucas hesitated in the doorway as if weighing whether to say something more. I know this has all happened very fast, he said finally. And I know you have no reason to trust me beyond what I did this afternoon. But I want you to know that I meant what I said to Harper. You are under my protection, and I take that seriously. I will get you to Sacramento safely. I promise you that. I believe you, Emma said, and realized as she spoke the words that they were true. There was something about Lucas Grant that inspired trust, something in the way he carried himself and spoke that told her he was a man of his word. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you help me? You did not know me, did not know anything about the situation except that 3 men were hunting someone. Most people would have ridden on, not wanted to get involved, but you stood up to them without hesitation. Why? Lucas was quiet for a moment, his face thoughtful in the moonlight. My mother died when I was young, he said finally. My father raised me on his own, taught me to track and hunt and survive in the wild. But more than that, he taught me that strength is not just about being fast with a gun or good in a fight. It is about standing up for people who cannot stand up for themselves. He used to say that any man who had the power to help someone and chose not to was no man at all. He paused, looking out the window at the moonlit landscape. He died 5 years ago, got kicked by a horse and never recovered from it. But I have tried to live by what he taught me. When I saw those men hunting through that shed, I knew someone was in trouble and I knew I had the ability to help. So I did. It is as simple as that. Emma felt her throat tighten with emotion. Your father sounds like he was a good man. The best, Lucas agreed. I hope I am living up to what he tried to teach me. You are, Emma said softly. I think he would be proud of you. Lucas looked at her then, really looked at her, and even in the dim moonlight she could see something shift in his expression. It was not quite a smile, but there was warmth there, a connection forming that went beyond simple protector and victim. Thank you, he said quietly. That means more than you know. They stood there for a moment, the silence between them comfortable rather than awkward. Emma realized with some surprise that despite everything she had been through, despite the fear and exhaustion and grief, she felt safe right now. Not just physically safe because of the walls around her and the gun on Lucas's hip, but genuinely safe in a deeper way, the kind of safety that came from trusting another person completely. You should get some more rest, Lucas said finally. I will wake you when it is time to go. What about you? Have you slept at all? I will rest once we are on the trail, he said. Right now, someone needs to keep watch. Emma wanted to argue, but she could see the determination in his face and knew it would be pointless. All right, she said. But promise me you will wake me if anything happens. I promise, Lucas said. He stepped back into the hallway and closed the door gently behind him. Emma returned to bed and lay down, expecting to have trouble falling back asleep, but exhaustion claimed her again almost immediately. This time her sleep was deeper and more peaceful, unmarred by the nightmares that had plagued her since her father's death. She woke to a gentle hand on her shoulder and opened her eyes to find Martha standing over her, a single candle providing light in the dark room. Time to go, dear, Martha said softly. Lucas has the horses ready. Emma sat up, instantly alert despite the early hour. Martha had laid out clean clothes for her, a simple brown riding skirt, a white blouse, and a dark jacket that looked sturdy and practical. There were also proper riding boots that fit surprisingly well. These were your daughters too? Emma asked as she dressed quickly. Some of them, Martha said. "The boots I bought from the mercantile yesterday evening. Figured you would need proper gear for the trail." "I cannot pay you back right now," Emma said, embarrassed. "I have almost no money, and I do not know when I will be able to repay you for your kindness." Martha waved her hand dismissively. "Consider it a gift, or if it makes you feel better, consider it a loan with no timeline for repayment. What matters is that you are dressed properly for travel." Emma finished dressing and followed Martha downstairs. In the kitchen, Lucas was packing saddlebags with supplies: dried meat, hard biscuits, canteens of water, and other trail necessities. He looked up as they entered and nodded approvingly at Emma's outfit. "That will serve you much better on the trail," he said. "Can you ride?" "Yes," Emma said. "My father taught me when I was young. I am not an expert, but I can manage." "That is good enough," Lucas said. He finished with the saddlebags and straightened up. "We have got a long ride ahead of us. The trail I am planning to take goes through the hills, keeps us off the main roads where Harper will be watching. It is going to be rough going in places, but safer." Martha handed Emma a canvas bag. "Food for the journey," she said. "And there is a canteen of coffee in there too, still warm. Figured you could use it." Emma took the bag, overwhelmed by this woman's generosity. "Thank you so much, Martha, for everything." Martha pulled her into a quick, tight hug. "You stay safe, you hear me? And Lucas, you take care of her." "I will," Lucas promised. They went out into the pre-dawn darkness. 2 horses waited in the yard: Lucas's dappled gray mare and a sturdy chestnut gelding that looked calm and reliable. Lucas helped Emma mount the chestnut, then swung up onto his own horse with practiced ease. "We will follow the creek east for the first few miles," Lucas said quietly, his voice barely above a murmur in the still air. "Stay close and stay quiet. Harper might have someone watching the roads, and sound carries in the early morning." Emma nodded her understanding. Lucas raised a hand in farewell to Martha, who stood on the porch watching them, then turned his horse and started off at a walk. Emma followed, her horse moving smoothly beneath her. The moon was setting, but dawn had not yet broken, leaving the world in that strange twilight that was neither night nor day. They moved through the sleeping town like ghosts, the only sound the soft clop of hooves on packed earth. Emma felt her heart pounding with nervous energy, expecting at any moment to hear shouts or gunshots, but nothing disturbed the morning quiet. They reached the edge of town, and Lucas guided them toward a creek that ran through a grove of cottonwood trees. Once they were among the trees, he urged his horse into a faster walk, and Emma followed suit. They rode in silence as the sky slowly began to lighten in the east. Emma focused on her riding, trying to match Lucas's easy rhythm and not think about the danger that might be following them. The creek burbled beside them, and birds began their morning songs in the trees overhead. Under other circumstances, it might have been peaceful, even beautiful. As full dawn broke, Lucas led them away from the creek and up into the hills, following what appeared to be a deer trail rather than any kind of established road. The going became rougher, and Emma had to pay close attention to keep her seat as her horse navigated rocks and steep inclines. But Lucas seemed to know exactly where he was going, moving with the confidence of someone who had traveled these hills many times before. When the sun was fully up, and they had been riding for over 2 hours, Lucas finally called a halt in a small clearing surrounded by pine trees. He dismounted and helped Emma down, and she was grateful to stretch her legs after the long ride. "We will rest the horses for a bit," Lucas said, "and get some food in us. We made good time this morning." They sat on a fallen log and shared the food Martha had packed: fresh bread, cheese, and the still warm coffee that tasted like heaven to Emma. As they ate, Lucas studied the trail behind them, his eyes constantly scanning for any sign of pursuit. "You think Harper is following us?" Emma asked. "If he figured out we left Coloma, yes," Lucas said. "But we have got a head start and he will not be sure which direction we went at first. That gives us an advantage." "You really know these hills, don't you?" Emma observed. "Spent a lot of time in this area over the years," Lucas said. "Did some prospecting myself early on, though I never had much luck finding gold or silver. Turned out I was better at helping other people protect what they found than I was at finding it myself." "Is that what you do? Protect prospectors?" "Sometimes," Lucas said. "I have done a lot of different things. Tracked outlaws for bounties, guided wagon trains, worked as a hired gun for ranchers dealing with rustlers. Whatever pays and seems like decent work. I have tried to avoid jobs that involve hurting people who do not deserve it, though in this country that is not always easy." Emma studied his profile as he gazed out over the hills. In the morning light, she could see him more clearly than she had been able to in the stress and shadows of yesterday. He had a strong face, not handsome in a conventional way but striking, with character etched into every line. There was a small scar on his left cheekbone and another on his jaw, marks of a hard life lived outdoors. But his eyes, when he turned them on her, were kind despite the hardness that survival in this land required. "What about you?" Lucas asked. "What was your life like before all this happened?" Emma felt the familiar ache of grief but pushed through it. "Simple," she said. "My mother died when I was young, like yours. My father raised me on his own, working various claims across California. We moved around a lot, following rumors of gold or silver. It was a hard life, but we were happy. He was teaching me to read assay reports, to understand geology, to run a claim properly. I think he hoped I would take over the operation someday, maybe find a good man to partner with." Her voice caught on the last words. "He was a good man, my father, honest and fair. He paid his workers well, never cheated anyone, always tried to do right. That is why Harper could not bully him into selling. He had principles, and he would not compromise them even when threatened." "Those are admirable qualities," Lucas said gently. "And dangerous ones in a place like this, where men like Harper operate without consequence." "He died because he was decent," Emma said, anger mixing with her grief. "He died because he believed people should be able to keep what they worked for, and that was inconvenient for a murderer and a thief. That is why we are going to make sure Harper pays for what he did," Lucas said firmly. "Your father's death will not be for nothing. We will get you to Sacramento, you will testify, and the law will bring Harper to justice." "You really believe that?" Emma asked. "That the law will actually care about one prospector's death?" "I believe that a woman's eyewitness testimony about a murder, combined with proof of attempted theft, will be enough to at least get Harper arrested and tried," Lucas said. "And once he is in custody, other people he has hurt will likely come forward. Men like him make a lot of enemies. The law might be slow and imperfect out here, but it is not completely useless." Emma wanted to believe him. She needed to believe that there was some justice possible in this wild, violent land. "I hope you are right," she said quietly. They finished their meal and mounted up again. The day wore on with steady riding through increasingly rugged terrain. Lucas led them along ridgelines and through narrow valleys, always keeping to cover when possible, always watching their back trail. Emma found herself trusting his judgment completely, following wherever he led without question. Around midday, they stopped again to rest and water the horses at a small spring that bubbled up between some rocks. While Lucas tended to the animals, Emma sat in the shade and tried to work out the knots in her sore muscles. She had thought she was in good shape after 2 weeks of traveling on foot, but riding all day used different muscles and she was feeling it. "You are doing well," Lucas said, glancing over at her. A lot of people would be complaining by now. My father always said complaining was a waste of energy better spent on solving problems, Emma replied. Besides, being sore is better than being dead. Lucas smiled at that, a genuine smile that transformed his serious face. Your father was a wise man. They rested for an hour, then pushed on again. The afternoon shadows were growing long when Lucas suddenly held up a hand, signaling for silence and a halt. Emma reined in her horse immediately, her heart rate spiking. Lucas dismounted quietly and moved to a point where he could look down over the valley below them. Emma stayed on her horse, barely breathing, watching as Lucas surveyed whatever he had seen. After a long moment, he came back, his expression grim. There are riders down in the valley, he said quietly. 3 of them, heading in the same general direction we are. I cannot be certain from this distance, but the lead horse looks like it could be Harper's black. Emma felt ice form in her stomach. They found our trail. Maybe, or maybe they are just guessing our direction and got lucky, Lucas said. Either way, we need to change our route. There is a more difficult trail that heads north from here, runs along the ridge for a while before dropping down towards Sacramento. It will add a day to our journey, but it will throw them off if they are tracking us. Whatever you think is best, Emma said, trusting his judgment. Lucas remounted and led them back the way they had come for about a mile, then turned onto what was barely visible as a trail at all, more of a suggestion of a path through the pine trees and rocks. The going was slow and treacherous, and Emma had to concentrate fully on keeping her seat as her horse picked its way over uneven ground. By the time darkness fell, they were high on a ridge with a commanding view of the surrounding territory. Lucas found a spot where they could camp in relative safety, sheltered by rocks and with good sightlines in all directions. He built a tiny fire, barely more than coals, just enough to heat some water for coffee and warm their hands against the evening chill. They ate more of Martha's provisions in silence, both of them tired from the long day's ride. Emma found herself studying Lucas in the flickering firelight, noticing details she had not had time to register before. The way his hands moved with calm efficiency as he tended the fire, the quiet competence in everything he did, the way his eyes never stopped scanning their surroundings even as he rested. "Can I ask you something?" Emma said finally, breaking the silence. "Of course," Lucas replied. "You ever get tired of this life? The constant travel, the danger, never really settling anywhere." Lucas considered the question, poking at the coals with a stick. "Sometimes," he admitted. "There are moments when I see families in town, people with homes and regular lives, and I wonder what that would be like. But then I think about the alternative, about spending my days behind a plow or a store counter, and I know that is not who I am. I need the open country, need to keep moving. It is in my blood, I guess." "Do you think you will ever want to settle down?" Emma asked. "Find a place to call home." "Maybe someday," Lucas said. "If I found the right reason to stay put, but it would have to be a powerful reason, something worth giving up the trail for." He looked up at her then, and in the firelight his eyes seemed to hold depth she had not noticed before. "What about you?" he asked. "What do you want for your future, after all this is over and Harper is dealt with?" Emma had not let herself think that far ahead, had been too focused on simple survival to imagine anything beyond the next day. But now, with Lucas asking the question directly, she found herself considering it. "I want to keep my father's claim," she said slowly. "Not to work it myself necessarily, but to make sure his legacy is not stolen by men like Harper. Beyond that, I suppose I want what most people want: safety, stability, maybe a family of my own someday. Though after everything that has happened, the idea of trusting anyone enough to build a life with them seems daunting." Trust is hard to come by out here, Lucas agreed. But when you find someone worthy of it, it is worth the risk. There was something in the way he said it, in the way he looked at her, that made Emma's pulse quicken. She told herself she was being foolish, reading too much into simple kindness and the natural intimacy that came from shared danger. But she could not quite shake the feeling that something was developing between them, something that went beyond protector and protected. "We should get some rest," Lucas said, breaking the moment. "I will take first watch. Wake me in a few hours and I will spell you." "You have barely slept since we met," Emma protested. "You need rest more than I do." "I've gone longer without sleep," Lucas said. "And right now, having someone with experience on watch is more important than a few hours of rest. Do not worry about me. I will be fine." Emma wanted to argue further but could see it would be pointless. "All right," she conceded. "But you will wake me to take a turn at watch, yes?" "I will," Lucas promised. Emma rolled herself in the blanket Martha had packed for her and lay down near the fire, using her saddlebag as a pillow. Despite her exhaustion, sleep was slow to come. She lay there watching Lucas as he sat with his back against a rock, his rifle across his lap, his eyes scanning the darkness beyond their small circle of firelight. He looked solid and dependable, a bulwark against the dangers that lurked in the night. She found herself wondering about him, about the life he had led, and the experiences that had shaped him into the man he was. He was clearly competent and dangerous when he needed to be, but there was also gentleness in him, a capacity for kindness that suggested he had not let the hardness of this land harden his heart completely. And she realized, with a little jolt of surprise, that she felt drawn to him in a way that had nothing to do with the protection he offered. There was something about Lucas Grant that called to her on a deeper level, something that made her want to know more about him, to understand what drove him and what he dreamed about during the long hours on the trail. It was a dangerous feeling to develop under the circumstances, she knew. She was vulnerable, frightened, grieving her father and dependent on Lucas for her survival. Any emotions she felt might just be the result of those circumstances rather than genuine connection. It would be foolish to mistake gratitude and relief for something deeper. But as she finally drifted off to sleep, Emma could not quite convince herself that what she was feeling was only gratitude. There was something more there, something that scared her almost as much as the thought of Wade Harper catching up with them. She woke some time later to find Lucas gently shaking her shoulder. "Your turn," he said quietly. "Everything has been quiet. Keep the fire low and wake me if you see or hear anything unusual." Emma sat up, shaking off the fog of sleep. Lucas handed her his rifle, showing her quickly how to work the action, then rolled himself in his own blanket and was asleep within minutes. Emma marveled at his ability to drop off so quickly, but she supposed it was a skill learned from years of uncertain rest on the trail. She settled herself where he had been sitting, the rock still warm from his body heat, and looked out into the darkness. The moon had risen, casting silver light over the landscape and making it easier to see. The night was full of small sounds, wind in the trees, the distant call of an owl, the rustle of small animals in the underbrush. Emma tried to catalog each sound, to understand what was normal and what might signal danger. The hours passed slowly. Emma found her thoughts wandering, drifting between memories of her father and awareness of the man sleeping a few feet away. She thought about the strange path that had brought them together, how one moment of choice on Lucas's part had changed everything for her. If he had ridden past that shed in Coloma without stopping, she would almost certainly be dead by now, killed by Harper and his men. The thought made her shiver despite the blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She owed Lucas her life, quite literally, and that was a debt she did not know how to repay. But more than that, she found herself grateful not just for the saving of her life but for his presence, for the way he treated her with respect and listened when she spoke, for the quiet strength that made her feel safe for the first time since her father's death. Dawn was just beginning to lighten the eastern sky when Lucas woke without prompting, instantly alert the way she was learning was his nature. He sat up and looked at her questioningly. "Quiet night," Emma reported. "Nothing unusual." "Good," Lucas said. He got up and stretched, working out the kinks from sleeping on hard ground, then came to sit beside her. Together they watched the sunrise, the sky turning from black to gray to pink and gold. It was beautiful, and for just a moment Emma let herself forget about Harper and danger and everything else, simply existing in the peace of the new day. "We should get moving soon," Lucas said, though he did not sound eager to break the moment. "We have got a long day ahead." They shared a cold breakfast of jerky and water, not wanting to take the time to build up the fire. Then they saddled the horses and continued north along the ridge. The trail remained difficult, but Emma was getting better at reading the terrain and trusting her horse to find its footing. Around mid-morning, they came to a place where the ridge dropped away sharply, and Lucas led them down a steep switchback trail that had Emma's heart in her throat. But they made it to the bottom without incident and found themselves in a narrow canyon with a creek running through it. "We will follow this creek for a few miles," Lucas said. "It eventually joins up with the American River, and from there we can make better time toward Sacramento." They rode through the canyon in single file, the walls rising steeply on either side. Emma felt exposed down here, unable to see what might be above them on the ridges, but Lucas seemed unconcerned, so she tried to trust his judgment. They were about halfway through the canyon when Lucas suddenly held up a hand and reined in sharply. Emma stopped immediately, and then she heard it, the sound of horses somewhere ahead, moving toward them through the canyon. Lucas's face went hard. "Get behind those rocks," he said quickly, pointing to a tumble of boulders near the canyon wall. "Now." Emma did not hesitate. She dismounted and led her horse behind the rocks, her heart pounding. Lucas followed, bringing both horses fully into cover. They crouched behind the boulders, Lucas with his rifle ready, peering around the edge toward the sound of approaching riders. 3 horses came into view around a bend in the canyon. Emma recognized Harper's black horse immediately, and her stomach clenched with fear. Harper was in the lead, with his 2 men flanking him. They were riding slowly, studying the ground, clearly tracking. "They found our trail," Lucas murmured, his voice barely audible. "Must have picked it up when we came down from the ridge." Emma watched as Harper and his men drew closer. She could see Harper's face now, set in grim determination. He was saying something to his men, though she could not make out the words at this distance. Lucas carefully raised his rifle, sighting along the barrel. But he did not fire, not yet. Emma realized he was hoping they would pass by without noticing the tracks leading to the rocks. But Harper was more observant than that. He pulled up his horse about 30 yards from their hiding spot and looked around carefully. Then his eyes fixed on something on the ground, probably fresh hoofprints leading toward the boulders. "Grant!" Harper called out, his voice echoing off the canyon walls. "I know you are here. I can see your tracks. No point in hiding." Lucas muttered a curse under his breath. Then slowly he stood up, keeping his rifle trained on Harper but not quite pointing it directly at him. "Harper," he acknowledged. "You are a long way from Coloma." "So are you," Harper replied. He had his hand on his gun but had not drawn it. His 2 men spread out slightly, creating a wider target. "This is foolish, Grant. You have got no stake in this. Just hand over the girl and ride away. No one needs to get hurt." "Not going to happen," Lucas said flatly. "I told you in Coloma, she is under my protection. That has not changed." Harper's face darkened with anger. "You are making a mistake. That girl has got something that belongs to me, and I mean to have it." "You are just one man, Grant. No matter how good you think you are, you cannot watch her every second. Sooner or later I will get what I want." "Then I guess you will keep being disappointed," Lucas said. "Because she is not going anywhere with you, and that deed she has is her legal property, not yours." "Legal property," Harper sneered. "Is that what she told you? That lying little thief stole that deed from me. Her father agreed to sell me his claim before he died. That deed belongs to me by rights." "That is a lie," Emma called out, unable to stop herself. She stood up beside Lucas, ignoring his quick gesture for her to stay down. "My father refused to sell to you, and you murdered him for it. I watched you shoot him in cold blood." Harper's eyes fixed on her with undisguised hatred. "You should have kept running, girl, because now you are going to die too, and Grant along with you for being fool enough to protect you." "Big talk from a man who murders unarmed prospectors," Lucas said coldly. "You want to try your luck against someone who can actually fight back, Harper? Go ahead. Draw that gun and let us settle this right now." The tension stretched so tight it felt like the air itself might crack. Emma could see the calculation in Harper's eyes, weighing his chances. 3 against 1 should have been overwhelming odds, but Lucas stood there with absolute confidence, his rifle steady, his eyes cold and hard. Finally, one of Harper's men spoke up, his voice nervous. "Boss, I heard stories about Grant. They say he killed 4 men in a shootout in Silver City. Never took a scratch." "Shut up," Harper snapped. But Emma could see the wariness in his expression now. He did not want to back down, but he also did not want to be the one to start shooting with Lucas Grant's rifle pointed in his direction. "We will meet again," Harper said finally. "You cannot protect her forever, Grant. You have got to sleep sometime." "When we meet again, it will be in Sacramento," Lucas replied, "with marshals present to hear Emma's testimony about what you did." "I would suggest you start running, Harper, because your days as a free man are numbered." Harper's face went red with fury, but he yanked his horse around and spurred it back down the canyon. His 2 men followed quickly, clearly relieved to be leaving. The sound of hoofbeats faded into the distance. Lucas did not lower his rifle until the sound had completely disappeared. Then he let out a long breath and looked at Emma. "That was too close," he said. "We need to change our route again. He is too good at tracking us. How did he find our trail?" Emma asked, her voice shaking slightly from the adrenaline. "Probably picked it up where we descended from the ridge," Lucas said. "The ground there was soft enough to leave clear prints. My fault for not being more careful." "You cannot blame yourself for every contingency," Emma said. "You have kept me alive and safe when I should be dead. That is what matters." Lucas looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. "You should not have stood up," he said quietly. "If that had turned into a shooting situation, you could have been killed." "So could you," Emma countered. "And I was not going to hide while you faced them alone. Besides, I wanted Harper to see my face, to know that I am not going to be intimidated into silence." A small smile touched Lucas's lips. "You are braver than you give yourself credit for." "Or more foolish," Emma said. "I am honestly not sure which." "Brave," Lucas said firmly. "Definitely brave." They mounted up and Lucas led them back the way they had come, out of the canyon. "We need to make this more difficult for Harper," he said. "I am going to take us through some rough country, places where tracking will be nearly impossible. It will be hard riding, but it is our best chance of losing him for good." They spent the rest of that day, and the next traversing terrain that Emma would have thought impassable. Lucas led them through streams to hide their tracks, over bare rock that would not take prints, through thick pine forests where the needle-covered ground showed little sign of their passage. It was exhausting work, especially for the horses, and they had to stop frequently to rest the animals. But Lucas's strategy worked. For 2 full days they saw no sign of Harper or his men. Slowly, the constant knot of tension in Emma's stomach began to ease. They were getting closer to Sacramento, closer to safety and the law. During those long days on the trail, Emma and Lucas talked more, the hours of riding side by side creating a natural intimacy. Lucas told her about his childhood, about learning to track from his father, about the strange and dangerous jobs he had taken over the years. Emma shared memories of her own childhood, of the joy and challenges of growing up following her father from claim to claim, of the education she had cobbled together from books and experience rather than formal schooling. She found herself increasingly drawn to him, not just as a protector, but as a person. Lucas had a quiet sense of humor that emerged during their conversations, a way of seeing the absurdities of life even in difficult circumstances. He was thoughtful and asked genuine questions about her opinions and feelings, treating her as an equal rather than just a burden to be protected. And Emma caught him looking at her sometimes with an expression that suggested his feelings might be developing beyond simple duty as well. It was in the way he made sure she had the best spot by the fire at night, the way he automatically helped her mount and dismount even though she was capable of doing it herself, the way his face softened when she smiled. On the 4th night since leaving Coloma, they made camp in a small meadow surrounded by aspen trees, their white bark gleaming like ghosts in the twilight. Lucas built a slightly larger fire than usual, judging they were far enough ahead of Harper to risk the light and warmth. After they had eaten, they sat together by the fire, closer than strictly necessary given the warmth of the evening. Emma found herself very aware of Lucas's presence beside her, of the solid strength of his shoulder nearly touching hers. "Tomorrow we should reach the American River," Lucas said. "From there it is only about a day and a half to Sacramento. We are almost there." "Thanks to you," Emma said. "I would never have made it without your help." "You are stronger than you think," Lucas replied. "You would have found a way." "I do not believe that," Emma said honestly. "But I appreciate you saying it." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the flames dance. Then Emma found herself speaking without quite planning to. "What will you do after we reach Sacramento? After you have delivered me safely to the marshals?" Lucas did not answer immediately. "I had not thought that far ahead," he said finally. "Usually I just move on to the next job, the next town. That is what I do." "Do you have to?" Emma asked, and then immediately regretted the question. It was too forward, too revealing of her feelings, but Lucas did not seem bothered by it. He turned to look at her, his gray eyes reflecting the firelight. "What are you asking, Emma?" Emma took a breath, gathering her courage. "I am asking if you might consider staying in Sacramento for a while, at least until the trial is over. I know I have no right to ask that of you, but I would like it if you did not just disappear from my life as soon as we reach the city." Lucas's expression was unreadable. "Why?" "Because I have come to value your company," Emma said, forcing herself to be honest. "Because in the midst of the worst time of my life, you have been the one good thing. Because I think, given time and different circumstances, we could become friends, maybe more than friends." There. She had said it, laid her feelings out plainly. Now Lucas would either acknowledge them or let her down gently, and either way at least she would know. Lucas reached out and took her hand, his calloused palm warm against hers. "I would like that too," he said quietly. "More than I should, probably, given the circumstances. I did not want to say anything because I thought you might feel obligated to me, might confuse gratitude with something else." "It is not gratitude," Emma said firmly. "Or at least not only gratitude. I know my own mind, Lucas." And I know that what I feel when I look at you is not just relief at being protected. It is something deeper than that." "I feel it too," Lucas admitted. "From almost the first moment, if I am being honest. When you stepped out of that shed, looking scared but defiant, refusing to give up even when you were trapped, I felt something shift inside me. And every day since, that feeling has grown stronger." Emma's heart was beating so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. "What does that mean for us?" "I do not know," Lucas said honestly. "But I do know that I do not want to just ride away when we get to Sacramento. I want to see where this might go if you are willing to take that chance." "I am willing," Emma said softly. Lucas smiled then, a real smile that transformed his whole face, and Emma thought she had never seen anything so beautiful. He lifted her hand and pressed his lips gently to her knuckles, a gesture that was both old-fashioned and achingly tender. "Then we will figure it out together," he said. They sat there by the fire, hands clasped, neither of them speaking because words felt unnecessary. Emma felt something settling inside her, a sense of rightness that she had not experienced since before her father's death. The future was still uncertain, Harper was still a threat, and there were legal battles ahead. But for the first time, she felt like she might have a reason to look forward to what came after all of that was resolved. Eventually, they settled down to sleep, but this time Lucas lay down near Emma rather than keeping watch all night. "We are far enough ahead," he explained. "And honestly, I need some real rest if I am going to be sharp tomorrow." Emma appreciated his trust in their safety, and more than that, she appreciated his presence close to her. As she drifted off to sleep, she was aware of his breathing, steady and calm, a reassuring sound in the wilderness night. She woke once during the night to find that she had shifted closer to Lucas in her sleep, and his arm had somehow ended up across her shoulders, holding her against his chest. She should probably move away, maintain propriety even out here in the wild. But instead she stayed where she was, soaking in the warmth and security of his embrace, and fell back asleep feeling safer than she had in weeks. Morning came too soon. They woke with the dawn and neither of them mentioned the way they had been sleeping. But there was a new ease between them, a bridge crossed that could not be uncrossed. They rode through the morning, and as Lucas had predicted, they reached the American River just after midday. It was running high with snowmelt from the mountains, and Lucas scouted carefully before finding a ford where they could cross safely. On the other side of the river, the landscape began to change. They were leaving the high country behind, descending into more settled territory. They passed farms and small homesteads, saw smoke from distant chimneys, encountered a freight wagon heading in the opposite direction. Civilization was close now, with all its safety and its complications. They made camp that night on the outskirts of a small town, whose name Emma did not catch. Lucas rode in to buy supplies and came back with fresh bread, cheese, and even a bottle of wine. "Figured we had earned a bit of celebration," he said with a slight smile. "We have made it further than Harper probably thought we could." They shared the food and wine, and the alcohol helped Emma relax muscles that had been tense for days. As the sun set and the stars came out, she found herself leaning against Lucas's shoulder, his arm around her waist, feeling content in a way that should have been impossible given everything she had been through. "Tomorrow," Lucas said quietly. "Tomorrow we reach Sacramento. And then what?" Emma asked. "And then you give your testimony to the marshals. They will send word to Nevada City, have Harper arrested if they can find him. There will be a trial and you will have to testify again. It will not be easy." "Will you be there?" Emma asked. "During the trial?" "If you want me to be," Lucas said. "I do," Emma said firmly. "I want you there." "Then I will be," Lucas promised. They sat in silence for a while longer, both of them aware that tomorrow would bring changes. Their time alone together on the trail was ending. Soon there would be other people, legal processes, the complexities of civilization. Things would be different. "Lucas," Emma said softly. "Yes, thank you for everything. For saving my life, for protecting me, for treating me like I matter. I do not think I will ever be able to fully express how much it has meant to me." Lucas turned to look at her, his face serious in the starlight. "You do matter, Emma. Not just to me, though you certainly matter to me, but you matter in yourself. You are brave and smart and stronger than you know. Your father would be proud of the way you have handled all of this." Tears stung Emma's eyes at the mention of her father. "I hope so," she whispered. Lucas pulled her closer, and Emma turned her face against his shoulder, finally allowing herself to grieve properly for the first time since her father's death. She cried quietly while Lucas held her, one hand stroking her hair, offering comfort without words. When the tears finally subsided, Emma pulled back, embarrassed. "I am sorry," she said. "I did not mean to fall apart on you." "Do not apologize," Lucas said gently. "You have been through something terrible. You are allowed to grieve." Emma wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I have been so focused on staying alive, on reaching safety, that I have not really let myself feel it. The loss, the anger, all of it." "That will come in time," Lucas said. "And when it does, I will be there to help you through it. You are not alone anymore, Emma. You understand that, right?" "You are not alone." Emma nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She leaned against Lucas again, drawing strength from his solid presence, and they sat like that under the stars until exhaustion finally claimed them both. They reached Sacramento late the next afternoon, the city sprawling along the river, much larger and busier than anything Emma had seen in years. The streets were crowded with wagons and riders, the wooden sidewalks thronged with people going about their business. After days in the wilderness, the noise and activity was almost overwhelming. Lucas led them to the marshal's office, a sturdy brick building near the center of town. He helped Emma dismount and they walked inside together, Lucas's hand at the small of her back, steadying and reassuring. The marshal on duty was a middle-aged man with graying hair and sharp eyes. He listened carefully as Emma told her story, his expression growing grimmer as she described her father's murder and Harper's pursuit. Lucas corroborated the details of Harper's attempts to capture Emma and produced the deed to the silver claim from Emma's bag. "This is serious," the marshal said when they had finished. "Murder and claim jumping. We will send word up to Nevada City, get a warrant issued for Harper's arrest. Miss Lawson, you will need to stay in Sacramento to testify when we bring him in for trial." "I understand," Emma said. "I will do whatever is necessary." "Do you have a place to stay?" the marshal asked. "Not yet," Emma admitted. The marshal scribbled something on a piece of paper and handed it to her. "This is the address of a respectable boarding house run by a widow named Mrs. Chen. Tell her Marshal Davies sent you. She will have a room available." Emma took the paper gratefully. "Thank you, Marshal." "Thank you for coming forward," Marshal Davies said. "Takes courage to testify against a man like Harper. We will do everything we can to make sure you are safe during the trial." They left the marshal's office and Lucas led them to the boarding house, which turned out to be a neat, well-maintained establishment on a quiet street. Mrs. Chen, a small woman of Chinese descent with an air of quiet competence, showed Emma to a clean, comfortable room upstairs. "I will need payment in advance," Mrs. Chen said. $5 a week includes 2 meals a day." Emma's heart sank. She had almost no money left, certainly not enough for even 1 week's room and board. But before she could speak, Lucas pulled out his wallet. "I will cover it," he said, handing over several bills. "For the next month to start. "Lucas, I cannot let you do that," Emma protested. "You can and you will," Lucas said firmly. "You need a safe place to stay and you need to eat. Consider it part of the protection I promised you." Emma wanted to argue but knew it would be pointless, and the truth was she had no other options. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I will pay you back as soon as I can access my father's accounts." "I am not worried about it," Lucas said, Mrs. Chen nodded approvingly at this exchange and left them alone. Emma looked around the room, taking in the simple but comfortable furnishings, the clean bedding, the window that looked out over a small garden. "This is nice," she said. "Much nicer than I expected." "You deserve nice things," Lucas said. He was standing in the doorway as if uncertain whether he should come fully into the room. "I should probably go. Let you get settled." Emma felt a flash of panic at the thought of him leaving. "Where are you going?" "I will find a room somewhere," Lucas said. "Then I need to see about stabling the horses and getting my gear sorted. But I will come back tomorrow, check on you and see if the marshal has any updates." "Promise?" Emma asked, hating how needy she sounded but unable to stop herself. Lucas crossed the room and took her hands in his. "I promise, Emma. I told you I am not going anywhere, not until this is finished and you are safe." Emma nodded, reassured by the certainty in his voice. "All right. Tomorrow, then." Lucas hesitated, then leaned in and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. "Get some rest," he said softly. "You have earned it." Then he was gone, and Emma was alone in the quiet room. She sat on the bed and suddenly felt exhausted, all the tension and fear of the past 2 weeks catching up with her at once. She lay back against the pillows and closed her eyes, and despite the noise of the city outside her window, she fell asleep almost immediately. She woke the next morning to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of cooking food drifting up from downstairs. For a moment she was disoriented, then memory returned and she sat up, taking stock of her situation. She was in Sacramento. She was safe. Harper could not get to her here, not with the marshal's office just a few blocks away and people all around. She washed using the basin and pitcher on the dresser, then changed into the cleanest of her clothes. Looking in the small mirror on the wall, she was struck by how different she looked from the terrified woman who had hidden in that shed in Coloma. There was still fear in her eyes, still grief for her father, but there was also something else now. Determination and maybe even hope. Mrs. Chen provided a hearty breakfast of eggs, rice, and vegetables, along with strong tea. Emma ate gratefully, realizing how much she had missed having regular, substantial meals. The other boarders at the table were a mix of miners, merchants, and laborers, all men who tipped their hats politely to Emma but otherwise left her alone. After breakfast, Emma went out onto the front porch to wait for Lucas. The morning was already growing warm, promising another hot September day. She watched the street, the endless flow of people and wagons, and marveled at how normal everything seemed. These people were just going about their lives, completely unaware of the murder and danger that had consumed Emma's world. Lucas appeared around mid-morning, riding his gray mare and leading Emma's chestnut behind him. He looked like he had gotten some real rest and had cleaned up, his clothes freshly brushed and his jaw cleanly shaved. Emma felt her heart lift at the sight of him. "Morning," he called, swinging down from his saddle with easy grace. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in weeks," Emma admitted. "A real bed makes all the difference." Lucas smiled. "I imagine so. I've got some news from the marshal. Harper was spotted near Placerville 2 days ago. They are sending a deputy up there to see if they can bring him in." "That is good news," Emma said, though she felt a flutter of nervousness. The thought of facing Harper in a courtroom was almost as frightening as being hunted by him in the wild. "It is," Lucas agreed. With any luck, they will have him in custody within the week." He paused, then added, "I also asked around about finding you some legal representation. There is a lawyer here in town, man named James Whitmore, who has a good reputation for handling land disputes and criminal cases. I thought you might want to meet with him, make sure all your legal affairs are in order." Emma was touched by his thoughtfulness. "That is a good idea. Would you come with me?" "Of course," Lucas said. They spent the rest of that morning visiting the lawyer, a sharp-eyed older man who listened carefully to Emma's story and examined the deed to her father's claim with thorough attention. "You have a solid case," Whitmore pronounced. "The deed is legitimate, properly filed and notarized. Combined with your eyewitness testimony about the murder, Harper should be looking at a hanging, assuming the jury does their job. I will be happy to represent you, Miss Lawson, both in the criminal trial and in securing your ownership of the claim." Emma agreed to his terms, which Lucas insisted on paying in advance despite her protests. By the time they left Whitmore's office, it was past noon, and Emma's head was spinning with legal terminology and procedures. "I need a break from all this," she said as they walked down the wooden sidewalk. "My brain feels like it is going to explode." Lucas laughed, a warm sound that Emma realized she loved hearing. "What would help, food, a walk?" "Both," Emma said. "Is there somewhere we could go that is quiet, away from the crowds?" Lucas thought for a moment. "There is a park along the river, usually pretty peaceful this time of day. We could pick up some food from a vendor and have a picnic." "That sounds perfect," Emma said. They bought bread, cheese, and apples from a street vendor, then walked to the park Lucas had mentioned. It was indeed peaceful, with large oak trees providing shade and a view of the river flowing lazily past. They found a spot on the grass away from the few other people in the park and settled down with their impromptu meal. "This is nice," Emma said, biting into an apple. "Thank you for thinking of it. You looked like you needed some quiet," Lucas said. "Legal matters can be overwhelming even when you are not dealing with murder and claim jumping." They ate in companionable silence for a while, watching the river and the occasional boat passing by. Emma found herself relaxing more completely than she had been able to in the city so far. Something about Lucas's presence made everywhere feel safer, calmer. "Can I ask you something?" Emma said after a while. "Always," Lucas replied. "What do you want to do?" "After all this is over, after the trial, after Harper is dealt with. You said you usually just move on to the next job, but is that really what you want?" Lucas was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the river. "I used to think it was," he said finally. "I thought the freedom of the trail, the ability to go wherever I wanted and never be tied down, was the most important thing. But lately, I have been wondering if maybe I was just running from something rather than toward it." "Running from what?" Emma asked gently. "Loneliness, I think," Lucas said. "Loss. My father died and I did not want to face the idea of building connections with people only to lose them again. It felt safer to stay on the move, to keep relationships simple and temporary. But that is not really living, is it? It is just existing." Emma felt her chest tighten with emotion at his honesty. "No," she said softly, "it is not really living." Lucas turned to look at her. "Meeting you has made me realize that," he said. "These past days with you, even with all the danger and difficulty, I have felt more alive than I have in years. And the thought of just riding away when this is over, going back to the way things were, makes me feel empty inside." "Then do not," Emma said, her heart beating fast. "Do not go back to the way things were." "What are you suggesting?" Lucas asked. Emma took a breath, gathering her courage. "I am suggesting that maybe we could see what happens if you stay. Really stay, not just until the trial but after. I know it is fast. I know we have only known each other for a little over a week, but Lucas, I have never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. And I think, if you are honest with yourself, you might feel the same way." Lucas reached out and took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "I do feel the same way," he said. "I have been trying not to push, trying to give you time to heal and figure out what you want without pressure from me. But Emma, from the moment you stepped out of that shed, looking scared but defiant, something in my chest just shifted. And every day since then, that feeling has grown stronger until I cannot imagine going back to my old life without you in it." Emma felt tears spring to her eyes, but they were happy tears this time. "So, what do? We take it one day at a time," Lucas said. "We get through the trial, we secure your claim, we figure out our lives. And we do it together." "Together," Emma repeated, liking the sound of that word. Lucas leaned in and Emma met him halfway. Their lips touched gently at first, a tentative exploration, but then the kiss deepened as weeks of building tension and emotion found release. Emma's hand came up to cup Lucas's jaw, feeling the slight rasp of stubble against her palm, and his arm went around her waist, pulling her closer. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. Lucas rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed. "I have wanted to do that since about day 3 on the trail," he admitted. Emma laughed shakily. "I have wanted you to do that since about day 2. Lucas grinned and kissed her again, softer this time, a promise rather than a revelation. When they finally drew apart, Emma felt like the world had shifted on its axis. Everything was different now, better, full of possibility. They spent the rest of that afternoon in the park, talking and planning and simply enjoying being together without the constant threat of immediate danger. Lucas told her more about his dreams, the idea he had been developing of maybe starting a guide service, using his tracking and wilderness skills to help legitimate prospectors and settlers rather than just drifting from job to job. Emma talked about her father's claim, about the possibility of hiring an operation manager to work it while she focused on other things, maybe even going back to school to study geology formally. As the sun began to set, they walked back toward Mrs. Chen's boarding house, hand in hand, neither of them wanting to separate but knowing propriety demanded it. At the door, Lucas pulled her close one more time. "I will see you tomorrow," he promised. "You better," Emma said, standing on tiptoe to kiss him once more. The next week passed in a blur of legal meetings, discussions with Marshal Davies, and stolen moments with Lucas whenever they could manage it. Word came that Harper had been arrested near Placerville and was being transported to Sacramento for trial. The news made Emma feel both relieved and anxious, knowing that the confrontation she had been dreading was now inevitable. Lucas stayed close throughout it all, attending meetings with her, providing support and steadiness when the legal processes became overwhelming. Emma found herself falling more deeply in love with him each day, marveling at how this man who had been a complete stranger 2 weeks ago now felt like the most important person in her life. The trial was set for late October, almost 6 weeks after Emma and Lucas first met. In the time leading up to it, they continued to grow closer, spending every possible moment together. Lucas took a job with a local freight company, doing guard work on valuable shipments, which allowed him to stay in Sacramento while still earning money. Emma met with her father's banker and lawyer and began the process of taking control of his estate, including the silver claim. The claim turned out to be even more valuable than her father had realized. A preliminary assay showed the silver vein running deep and rich, potentially worth a fortune. Emma hired a mining operation to work it properly and found herself, at age 22, suddenly a woman of considerable means. But the money meant less to her than the time she spent with Lucas, walking along the river in the evenings, sharing meals at small restaurants, attending church services on Sundays. They talked about everything and nothing, learning each other's minds and hearts, building a foundation of friendship to support the passion that flared between them. Lucas proposed to her one evening in late October, just days before the trial was set to begin. They were sitting in the park where they had shared their first kiss, watching the sun set over the river. "Emma," Lucas said, taking both her hands in his, "I know this is not the most romantic timing, with the trial coming up and everything still unsettled. But I cannot wait any longer to ask you something I have known the answer to for weeks now." Emma's heart started to pound. "Yes." Lucas reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold ring with a small but beautiful sapphire set in it. "This was my mother's," he said softly. "My father gave it to me before he died, told me to give it to the woman I loved when I found her. Emma Lawson, I love you more than I thought possible to love another person. You have made me want things I never wanted before, a home, a family, a future that does not involve constantly running from place to place. Will you marry me? Will you build a life with me?" Tears were streaming down Emma's face, but she was smiling so wide her cheeks hurt. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Lucas. Absolutely yes. I love you too so much." Lucas slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, the blue of the sapphire catching the last rays of sunset. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her, and Emma felt like her heart might burst from sheer happiness. Here, in this man's embrace, she had found home. The trial began on a crisp autumn day in late October. The courtroom was packed with spectators, curious about the case of the murdered prospector and his brave daughter. Emma sat in the front row with Lucas beside her and Mr. Whitmore on her other side, his presence reassuring and professional. Wade Harper was brought in shackled, his face hard and bitter. He glared at Emma with undisguised hatred, but she met his eyes steadily, refusing to be intimidated. She had Lucas beside her and the law on her side. Harper could not hurt her anymore. The trial lasted 3 days. Emma testified on the first day, recounting in clear, steady tones how Harper had confronted her father at their claim, demanding he sell for a fraction of the property's worth. She described how her father had refused, how Harper had threatened him, and finally how Harper had drawn his gun and shot her father in the chest, killing him almost instantly. "I watched from the stable," Emma said, her voice breaking only slightly. "I saw everything. There was no fight, no argument that justified it. Harper murdered my father in cold blood because he would not give up his claim." Harper's lawyer tried to discredit her testimony, suggesting she was lying to steal a claim that Harper had legitimately purchased. But Emma had the deed, properly filed and notarized, and witnesses who testified that her father had never indicated any intention to sell. Lucas testified about Harper's pursuit of Emma, his threats, his attempt to capture her in Coloma. On the third day, the jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before returning with a verdict. Guilty of murder in the first degree, guilty of attempted theft, guilty of numerous related charges. The judge sentenced Harper to hang, and as he was led from the courtroom, he turned one last time to look at Emma. "You have destroyed me," he spat. "No," Emma said quietly, though he was already too far away to hear. "You destroyed yourself. I just told the truth." Outside the courthouse, Emma stood with Lucas in the autumn sunshine, feeling like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. It was over. Harper would hang, justice had been served for her father, and her claim was secure. The nightmare that had begun that terrible day in Nevada City was finally ended. "How do you feel?" Lucas asked, his arm around her waist. "Relieved," Emma said. "Sad still for my father, but relieved that it is done." She looked up at Lucas, at this man who had saved her life and then given her a reason to want to live it fully. And grateful, so incredibly grateful for you. You do not need to be grateful, Lucas said gently. Just be happy. That is all I want. I am happy, Emma said, and realized as she spoke that it was true. Despite everything she had lost, despite the grief that would probably always be a part of her, she was genuinely happy. She had found love in the most unexpected place, in the midst of terror and loss, and it had transformed everything. They were married in early December, in a small church in Sacramento with Mrs. Chen and Mr. Whitmore standing as witnesses. Emma wore a simple blue dress that matched her engagement ring, and Lucas wore his best suit, his hair neatly combed and his face clean-shaven. Marshall Davies attended, along with Martha Patterson, who had traveled down from Coloma for the occasion. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Lucas kissed her with a tenderness that made Emma's heart overflow. This man, this brave, kind, steadfast man, was hers now, and she was his, and they had the rest of their lives to build together. They took a honeymoon trip up to Coloma, staying at Martha's boarding house and exploring the hills where they had first fallen in love. It was strange to retrace their steps in peace and safety, holding hands as they walked trails they had once traveled in fear. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you had ridden past that shed? Emma asked one afternoon as they sat on a hillside overlooking the valley. Sometimes, Lucas admitted, but not with regret. I think somehow we were meant to meet, meant to find each other. Your father's death was a terrible tragedy, but if it had not happened, if Harper had not chased you to Coloma, we would never have crossed paths. I do not know if that makes it any better, but I cannot regret something that brought you into my life. Emma leaned her head against his shoulder. My father would have liked you, she said. He always said the measure of a man was what he did when there was no benefit to himself. You helped me when you had no reason to, no promise of reward. That is the kind of man he respected. I would have liked to know him, Lucas said. And I promise you, Emma, I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of his daughter. You already are, Emma said softly. They returned to Sacramento after a week and began building their life together. They bought a house on a quiet street, nothing too grand but comfortable and theirs. Lucas started his guide service, which quickly became successful as word spread about his skills and reliability. Emma hired a reputable mining company to work her father's claim and used the profits to invest in other ventures, including a small stake in a freight company and the purchase of a building that she rented out to merchants. They were both busy, but they always made time for each other, for evening walks and Sunday picnics, for quiet dinners at home and occasional trips to the theater. Their life was not easy. This was still the West, still a hard land that demanded toughness and perseverance. But they faced it together, and that made all the difference. In the spring of 1860, Emma discovered she was pregnant. She told Lucas one evening after dinner, watching his face light up with joy and wonder. He pulled her into his arms, holding her gently as if she might break, and she felt his heart racing against her cheek. We are going to have a baby, he whispered, awe in his voice. Emma, we are going to be parents. Are you happy? Emma asked, though she could see the answer in his face. Happy does not begin to cover it, Lucas said. Terrified, excited, grateful, all of those things and more. Their son was born in November, a healthy boy with Lucas's gray eyes and Emma's dark hair. They named him Thomas, after Emma's father, and Lucas cried when he held his son for the first time, tears of joy and wonder at this new life they had created. Emma watched Lucas with their baby and fell in love with him all over again. He was a devoted father, patient and gentle, willing to get up for nighttime feedings and change diapers without complaint. He sang to Thomas, told him stories, carried him around the house pointing out everything as if the baby could understand. Their life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Work and family, challenges and joys, the everyday building of a life together. They had 2 more children over the next few years, a daughter named Sarah and another son named James. Their house rang with laughter and occasionally tears, with the chaos and love of a growing family. Lucas never did go back to his solitary drifting life. He built his guide service into a thriving business, took on a partner to handle some of the work as he got older, and focused more of his energy on being home with Emma and the children. The silver claim continued to produce, providing them with financial security that allowed them to help others when they could. They opened a school in Coloma, funded by Emma's mining profits, ensuring that children in the small town had access to education. They helped new settlers get established, extended credit to struggling merchants, did what they could to build up the community that had played such an important role in their story. As the years passed, Emma sometimes thought about that terrified woman hiding in a shed, running for her life from murderers. It felt like a lifetime ago, like it had happened to someone else. The grief for her father never fully went away, but it softened into a bittersweet ache rather than the sharp agony it had been at first. She kept his deed framed on the wall of Lucas's office, a reminder of where they had come from and what they had overcome. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Lucas took Emma back to Coloma, to the meadow where they had camped during their journey to Sacramento. They stood together looking out over the valley, older now but still deeply in love. "You ever regret it?" Lucas asked. "Marrying a drifter, building a life in this rough country instead of going somewhere more civilized." Emma turned to look at him, this man who had saved her life and then made it worth living. His hair was graying at the temples now, his face more lined than it had been when they met, but his eyes were the same, steady, kind, full of love for her. "Never," she said firmly. "Not for a single moment. You gave me everything, Lucas. Safety when I was in danger, love when I thought I would be alone forever, a family and a home and a life full of meaning. How could I ever regret that?" Lucas pulled her close and kissed her, and Emma felt the same spark she had felt 20 years ago in that Sacramento park. Some things never changed, no matter how much time passed. They stayed in Coloma for a week, revisiting old memories and making new ones. Martha Patterson was still alive and running her boarding house, now in her 80s but still formidable. She embraced them both warmly and insisted on throwing them an anniversary dinner, inviting half the town. "I always knew you two were meant for each other," Martha said during the dinner, raising a glass in toast. "From the moment Lucas brought you to my door, Emma, I could see something special between you. It has been a privilege to watch your love grow over these years." Emma raised her own glass, blinking back happy tears. "Thank you, Martha, for everything you did for us, for giving us a safe place when we needed it most." As they traveled back to Sacramento, Emma reflected on how strange and wonderful life could be. She had lost so much, had faced death and terror and grief. But through it all, she had found Lucas, and with him she had built something beautiful. Their 3 children were grown now, Thomas working in the guide service with his father, Sarah married to a good man and living in San Francisco, James studying law in preparation to join Mr. Whitmore's practice. Emma and Lucas settled into the comfortable rhythm of their later years, still working but with less urgency, spending more time together and with their growing family of grandchildren. They traveled when they could, visited their children, and always made time for each other. Lucas was 60 years old when he finally retired from the guide service, handing it over entirely to Thomas and his partner. Emma had long since sold her direct stake in the mining operations, though she still collected royalties from the claim her father had died protecting. They spent their retirement years in peace, tending the garden behind their house, reading together in the evenings, taking walks along the river where they had fallen in love so many years ago. They watched California change around them, watched as the wild frontier they had known gradually became more civilized, as railroads and telegraphs connected the state to the rest of the nation. On a warm evening in late September, almost 40 years after they had first met, Emma and Lucas sat together on their porch watching the sunset. Lucas's hair was white now, and Emma's dark locks were streaked with silver. Their hands, clasped together, bore the marks of age and hard work. "What are you thinking about?" Lucas asked, breaking the comfortable silence. "Everything," Emma said. "About how different my life turned out from what I expected when I was 22, about how grateful I am for every moment we have had together." Lucas squeezed her hand gently. "I was just thinking the same thing. When I woke up that morning in Coloma, I had no idea my whole life was about to change. If someone had told me I would find the love of my life hiding in a grain shed, I would have thought they were crazy." Emma laughed softly. "It is a good story, is not it?" "Our story. The best," Lucas agreed. "And it is not over yet. We have got years left in us still." "Years of what?" Emma teased. "Years of this," Lucas said, gesturing to the two of them sitting together in the golden light. "Years of holding your hand and watching sunsets and waking up next to you. Years of being grateful every single day that I decided to make that shot my business all those years ago." Emma leaned her head on Lucas's shoulder, feeling the same sense of safety and contentment she had felt since the day he first said she was under his protection. "I love you, Lucas Grant," she said softly. "I love you too, Emma Grant," he replied. "Always have, always will." They sat together as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Around them, the city they had watched grow and change continued its evening rhythm. But on this porch, in this moment, there were only the two of them and the love they had built through decades of joy and hardship, laughter and tears. It had started in fear and danger, with a cowboy finding a woman hiding from outlaws and declaring she was under his protection. But it had become so much more than that. A partnership, a love story, a life built together one day at a time. And as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Emma knew that no matter how many years they had left together, she would spend every one of them grateful for the day Lucas Grant rode into her life and changed it forever. Their grandchildren would later tell their own children about Emma and Lucas, about how they met and fell in love in the wild days of the California frontier. The story would become family legend, passed down through generations. The tale of a brave young woman who witnessed her father's murder and ran for her life, and the cowboy who faced down killers to protect her, declaring that she was under his protection from that moment forward. But the best part of the story, the part that made it more than just a dramatic tale of the Old West, was what came after. It was the 47 years Emma and Lucas spent together, the family they raised, the businesses they built, the community they helped establish, and most of all, the enduring love that carried them through everything life threw their way. That was the real story, the one that mattered most, and it had the best possible ending. Two people who found each other in the darkest moment and built a lifetime of light together.